Easter lunch at my parents' house had always been an ordeal, but this year promised to be particularly excruciating. I sat at the dining room table surrounded by my family: Mom, Dad, my older brother Marcus, his wife Stephanie, and their 3 children who were currently destroying the living room. The table was set with Mom's best china, the kind she only brought out for holidays and to impress people. "Natalie, you're not eating," Mom observed, her voice carrying that particular tone of judgment I'd grown up with. "All that healthy eating nonsense. You know, Marcus doesn't worry about calories, and look how successful he is." Marcus grinned from across the table, his mouth full of ham. At 35, he'd spent the last decade bouncing between failed business ventures, all funded by our parents. His latest idea was a luxury pet hotel that had somehow already burned through $200,000 without opening its doors. I was 32 years old and, according to my family, a boring accountant who'd wasted my potential on a safe, uninspiring career. If only they knew. "I'm fine, Mom," I said, taking a small bite of potatoes. "Still working at that accounting firm?" Dad asked, not bothering to hide his disappointment. "What is it, Thompson and Associates?" "Something like that," I said quietly. What they didn't know was that I wasn't just working at an accounting firm. I was the majority shareholder and silent partner of Thompson Financial Group, a boutique investment firm I'd co-founded 7 years ago. We managed $840 million in assets for high-net-worth clients. My personal net worth was $47 million. But I'd learned long ago that my family didn't ask about my work because they didn't care. They'd decided who I was at 23, and nothing I said would change their minds. "Well," Dad said, setting down his fork with purpose, "now that we're all here, your mother and I have something important to discuss." "Here it comes," I thought. "As you know, we're getting older. Retirement is expensive. Healthcare is expensive. We've spent our lives providing for you children, and now it's time for you to provide for us." Marcus nodded enthusiastically as if this made perfect sense. "We need you to empty your retirement accounts," Dad continued. "All of them. For 401k IRA, whatever you have saved. We've calculated that you should have about $150,000 saved up by now. We need that money." I set down my fork. "For what?" "For us," Mom said as if it were obvious. "We want to travel before we're too old. We've been planning a Mediterranean cruise, then a month in Tuscany. It's expensive, but we deserve it after raising 2 children. You're asking me to drain my retirement savings so you can take luxury vacations?" "We're not asking," Dad said firmly. "We're telling you. Family takes care of family. Marcus has already agreed to contribute." I looked at Marcus. "You have?" "Of course," he said. "I'm giving them $50,000 from my business account." The business account funded entirely by Dad's previous investments in his failed ventures. "And we need your $150,000 by next Friday," Mom added. "We've already booked everything. Non-refundable." My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my CFO Richard Park. "Board meeting moved to 2 p.m. Federal banking investigators want to discuss the Richardson fraud case. Your testimony needed." The Richardson fraud case. 3 months ago, we discovered that a potential client had been running an elaborate scheme to steal from elderly family members by accessing their retirement accounts without authorization. I'd personally reported it to the Federal Banking Commission, and the investigation had led to multiple arrests. I looked back at my parents, at their entitled faces, at their casual demand that I hand over my life savings for their vacation. "What if I say no?" I asked quietly. Dad's face darkened. "Then you're not the daughter we raised. We gave you everything: food, clothes, education. You owe us." I paid for my own education. I had a full scholarship to Michigan State. "We still fed you for 18 years. That's worth something." Marcus chimed in. "Come on, Nat, stop being selfish. They just want to enjoy their retirement. You're making plenty of money anyway. You don't know how much I make." "You're an accountant," Stephanie said with a condescending smile. "It's not like you're making millions. Just give them the money." My phone buzzed again. "Richard. Also, federal investigators flagged suspicious activity on accounts matching your parents' names. Need to discuss." My blood went cold. "Have you been accessing my accounts?" I asked slowly. "What?" "No," Mom said, but her eyes shifted. "Why would you ask that?" "Mom." Have you been accessing my accounts? Well, we have your information from when you listed us as emergency contacts years ago. We just looked to make sure you could afford to help us. You accessed my financial accounts without authorization? You're our daughter. We have a right to know. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. My emergency fund, the one I kept in a basic checking account with $50,000 for actual emergencies, showed recent login attempts from an IP address in this house. They tried to access my accounts. They just hadn't succeeded because I had two-factor authentication. But they tried. Hold up. I'd grown up watching my parents favor Marcus in everything. He was the golden child. Charming, social, full of big ideas. I was the quiet one who liked numbers and spent weekends studying instead of partying. When Marcus dropped out of college after 2 years, Dad called it finding his own path. When I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in finance, Mom said, "That's nice, dear," and went back to discussing Marcus's newest business idea. I'd started my career at a small accounting firm, working brutal hours for modest pay. But I'd learned everything: tax law, investment strategies, wealth management. At 25, I'd partnered with my former mentor, James Thompson, to start our own firm. We'd started with 3 clients and $2 million under management. Within 3 years, we'd grown to 40 clients and $200 million. Within 5 years, $500 million. Last year we'd crossed $840 million. My personal compensation was $4.2 million annually, plus my ownership stake worth approximately $43 million. But I kept it quiet. I drove a modest Honda, lived in a nice but not ostentatious townhouse, and never flaunted my wealth. I'd learned that people treated you differently when they knew you had money, especially family. Now, sitting at Easter lunch, I realized my instinct had been correct. My parents didn't love me. They saw me as a resource to extract from. "I need to use the restroom," I said, standing up. In the bathroom, I called Richard. "The suspicious activity you flagged. What exactly did you find?" 3 attempted unauthorized logins to your primary investment account from an IP address in Westchester County. That's where your parents live, right? Yes. The attempts were unsuccessful due to your security protocols, but the pattern matches the Richardson case. Family members attempting to access accounts to drain retirement funds without authorization. What's the legal definition of that? Attempted financial fraud. If they'd succeeded, it would be felony theft. The attempts alone could be prosecuted as conspiracy to commit fraud, especially if we can prove intent. They just demanded I empty my retirement accounts and give them $150,000 for a vacation. Richard was quiet for a moment. "Natalie, that's a textbook setup for financial elder abuse, except in reverse. They're trying to coerce you into liquidating retirement assets, and they've already attempted unauthorized access. This is serious. What do I do?" "Document everything. Record the conversation if it's legal in New York, which it is since you're part of the conversation. And consider whether you want to press charges." I hung up and returned to the table. Mom was serving dessert, her famous apple pie. "So Natalie," Dad said as I sat down, "we'll need that money by Friday. Wire transfer is fine." I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app. In New York, one-party consent meant I could legally record this conversation. "Just to be clear," I said calmly, "you want me to liquidate my entire retirement savings and give you $150,000 for a vacation?" "Yes," Mom said. "It's the least you can do after everything we've done for you." "And if I refuse?" "Then you're not welcome in this family anymore," Dad said flatly. "We'll cut you off completely. No more holidays, no more family gatherings. You'll be dead to us." Marcus nodded. "Yeah, Nat, don't be dramatic. Just give them the money." "Have you tried to access my bank accounts without my permission?" Mom's face flushed. "We just looked. We needed to see if you could afford it. You attempted to log into my investment accounts without authorization. That's illegal. You're our daughter. We have a right." "You have no right. That's attempted fraud." Dad slammed his hand on the table. "How dare you accuse us of fraud? We raised you. And now you're trying to steal from me. It's not stealing. It's family obligation." My phone rang. "Richard." I answered on speaker. "Ms. Morrison, this is Richard Park, CFO of Thompson Financial Group. I'm calling to inform you that the Federal Banking Commission has requested an emergency meeting regarding suspicious activity on your accounts. They're sending investigators to your current location. The table went silent. Investigators. Mom's voice was weak. Yes, ma'am. The attempted unauthorized access to Ms. Morrison's accounts has been flagged as potential financial fraud. Given the pattern similarity to the Richardson case, federal prosecutors are involved. Dad's face had gone white. Natalie, tell them it's a misunderstanding. Is it? I asked. You tried to access my accounts without permission, then demanded I liquidate my retirement savings for your vacation. That's exactly the pattern the FBI is investigating. Marcus stood up. This is insane. We're family. Family doesn't commit fraud, I said quietly. Revelation. The doorbell rang. Dad moved to answer it, but I stood first. I'll get it. At the door stood 2 FBI agents and a representative from the Federal Banking Commission. I'd worked with them on the Richardson case, so I recognized Special Agent Catherine Woods immediately. Ms. Morrison, Agent Woods said. We received your CFO's emergency alert. May we come in? Please. I led them into the dining room. My family's faces ranged from confused to terrified. Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, Agent Woods began. I'm Special Agent Catherine Woods with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. We're investigating attempted unauthorized access to your daughter's financial accounts. This is a misunderstanding, Dad said quickly. We're family. We were just checking. You attempted to log into secured investment accounts without authorization. That's attempted fraud under federal law. Mom started crying. We just wanted to see if she could help us. Mrs. Morrison, your daughter's accounts contain approximately $47 million in assets. You attempted to access them without permission after demanding she liquidate her retirement savings. That constitutes conspiracy to commit financial fraud. The number hung in the air like a bomb. 47 million? Marcus's voice cracked. Natalie has $47 million? Ms. Morrison is the majority shareholder of Thompson Financial Group, the Banking Commission representative explained. She manages over $840 million in client assets and has a personal net worth of approximately $47 million. Your attempted access to her accounts triggered federal fraud alerts. Dad looked at me, his face a mixture of shock and betrayal. You're a millionaire? I'm the co-founder and majority partner of an investment firm. I've been building it for 7 years. But you said you were an accountant. I am. I'm also a licensed investment advisor and the primary decision-maker for a firm managing nearly $1 billion. Why didn't you tell us? Mom whispered. Because of this. Because the moment you knew I had money, you'd see me as an aita. Which is exactly what happened. Agent Woods pulled out a tablet. We need to review the attempted account access. Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, you tried to log into your daughter's primary investment account 6 times over the past 2 weeks. We just wanted to see. You wanted to see if you could steal from her, I said quietly. You tried to access my accounts, and when that failed, you demanded I liquidate everything and hand it over. That's not family. That's fraud. Marcus stood up. You're going to let them arrest Mom and Dad over this? They committed a federal crime. They're your parents. They tried to steal millions of dollars from me. Agent Woods held up a hand. Ms. Morrison, given the circumstances, you have options. You can press charges which would result in federal prosecution. Or you can decline to prosecute, and we'll close the investigation with a warning. I looked at my parents. At their entitled faces even now, even caught in the act. At Marcus, who'd never worked for anything in his life but expected me to fund their vacation. I want to press charges, I said. Natalie. Mom screamed. We're your family. You stopped being my family when you tried to steal from me. Dad's voice was cold. If you do this, you'll have nothing. No family, no one to care about you. Just your money. I have colleagues who respect me. Clients who trust me. A career I built myself. That's more than you ever gave me. Agent Woods nodded to her partner. Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit financial fraud and attempted unauthorized access to financial accounts. The arrest happened quickly. Handcuffs, Miranda rights, the works. Marcus and Stephanie gathered their children and left without a word to me. I stood in my parents' dining room surrounded by the ruins of Easter lunch and felt nothing. Resolution. The trial lasted 3 months. The evidence was overwhelming. The attempted logins, the recorded conversation demanding money, the pattern of financial coercion. My parents were convicted on 5 counts of attempted fraud and conspiracy. Dad got 4 years in federal prison. Mom got 3. Marcus sent one email. "I hope you're happy. You destroyed this family." I never replied. The story made national news. Millionaire financial advisor prosecutes parents for attempted fraud, ran in the Wall Street Journal. Forbes did a profile. The daughter who chose justice. How one woman protected her fortune from family fraud. 6 months after the conviction, I was promoted to managing partner of Thompson Financial Group. Our assets under management crossed $1 billion. My personal net worth increased to $52 million. I donated $5 million to establish a foundation helping fraud victims, particularly adult children being financially exploited by parents. I named it the Morrison Family Justice Initiative. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. 1 year after Easter lunch, I received a letter from my mother in prison. 3 pages of self-pity and blame. The final line, "A real daughter would have forgiven us." I wrote back one sentence, "A real parent wouldn't have tried to rob me." 2 years later, I was invited to testify before Congress about family financial fraud. I told my story. The golden child brother, the dismissed daughter, the attempted theft disguised as family obligation. The testimony led to new federal protections for adults being financially coerced by family members. I never spoke to my parents again. When they were released from prison, they tried to contact me once. I had my attorney send a cease and desist letter. 5 years after that Easter lunch, Thompson Financial Group was managing $2.3 billion in assets. I was 37 years old and worth $89 million. I bought a beautiful house overlooking the Hudson River. I traveled the world. I built friendships with people who valued me for who I was, not what I could give them. And every Easter I had lunch alone in my dining room, eating whatever I wanted, answering to no one. It was the best Easter tradition I'd ever had.